Yeah. So with the record you did in quarantine, tell us a little bit about how you did everything on that.
Yeah, I did everything except for the guitar solo on the very last song, which is
Cool.
called Shelter in Place. And that's
It's one of my favorites,
oh
man. What the
man,
heck?
thank you.
Those drums are sick. Yeah, the whole thing is that one actually I had to look down and be like, what is this? This is cool. I love that.
Thank you, man.
The
Yeah.
drums are like really blasted out. They're like super I just I'm like thinking as a producer, but they just are like they're really grungy and really blasted out.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's also like a little bit of like subtle. There's some subtleness to the track too. It's really interesting
Mhm.
how you put those things together. Did you mix the whole thing?
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's incredible, man.
Thank you,
And
man.
you're using real bass and synth bass on a lot of those.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I played real bass on, let's see, probably I think it was like Stimulus two step um and Natural Hair
Mm,
and 2 in 1, and I think that might be it. And then I think it's synth bass for basically everything else, and even on those
yeah.
other tunes as well. But um,
And so walk. I wanted to talk about your bass sounds,
yeah,
man. Like, and this could be something that people could use in any maybe like VST kind of synth type thing. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
a lot of people don't have analog gear necessarily,
yeah,
but there's a lot of emulation. So, like, kind of walk through a little bit of what you're thinking with like particular bass sounds, because there's so many different ways to get a unique bass sound,
yeah,
and I'd love to just hear your process on that.
for sure. So typically, like for me, just off the board, like I'm like my sound is just like the Fender Jazz sound. Like that's kind of like the starting point at the very least.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it kind of depends on the song as to whether I'm going to venture away from that or not.
Right.
But typically like I'll kind of record it as I normally do, dry, just directly in. I have I can't recall the company that makes this, but they make like a Mark Bass plugin emulation.
Great.
So it definitely helps for like, not being able to kind of have like my amps in my apartment. So
Yeah, man. Real
um
talk. Yeah.
yeah, man. So I typically run it into that after or after it's done, after I finish recording or after I'm, cool with the take. And I'll just kind of tweak things there. Normally not a whole lot because I kind of treat it as like a preamp in a sense because I'm just
Mm.
kind of using the head for the most part, unless I specifically
Mm-hmm.
want to kind of have like the amped sound and kind of do all
Right.
that kind of thing. Um, but if I'm just going the route of just kind of having like a preamp kind of situation, I'll kind of have it mostly flat. I kind of do like things, mostly flat for the most part, and then I'll just kind of sculpt how I need to with just, equalization, in the
Yeah.
mixing process.
Right.
Um but yeah, man, I mean for the most
And
part,
are you EQing as you go? Like or are you like, I gotta nail this and then I'll come back and then EQ it? Or are you kind of using EQ as effects
mm,
while you're recording?
no, I kind of just get the part down and then
Mm.
I'll kind of like, figure that kind of thing out unless it's a specific sound I'm kind of going for. Like
Right.
with the quarantine quince. Like
Mm.
that was a very kind of warm sound like on my 5 string, so I kind of dialed
Right.
the highs down just on the board on board. I just dialed the highs
Mm-hmm.
down, um rolled over to the neck pickup, and just kind of went for more of kind of like a Jamerson thing, but like even warmer than that,
Mm.
but just kind of like rolled off, tone wise, so
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And for those folks that don't, are not familiar with it, I mean, like, when you mix bass, it was really hard for me to understand that. Like, if people are listening on laptop speakers, they're not going to hear the bass
Yeah.
unless there is some sort of the frequency range. There's some mid
Correct.
push to
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So and most people are listening on like their iPhone, right out of like the mono speaker.
Mm-hmm.
and or I mean a lot of times earbuds, so you'll be able to hear it there sort of, but like kind of getting that mid range to poke through is so important
Oh,
for a
definitely.
bass itself
Yeah,
to hear what's going on, especially with the rest of the track.
definitely, definitely. I'll always use like analog tape kind of saturation or analog like emulation of some sort to kind of give it a little more of that mid warmth and
Mm-hmm.
kind of give it a little more of a punchy feel and compression
Yeah,
too, you know. To kind of
yeah,
just kind of have it sit in a way where I can kind of make sure that it's present in other kind of speaker environments if the
right,
tone like calls for that.
right.
um you know, and then in that way it's not kind of getting lost when it translates from, you know, medium to medium, hopefully, because
Yeah,
I'm still working on things.
yeah, man, me
But
too.
yeah.
And sometimes it's just like if you mute it, you know that it's gone, but
Right.
when it's unmuted, it brings something there that's subtle, but like,
Yeah.
oh, this feels right.
Yeah.
And then when I take like, but you wouldn't be, no one would sit there and be like, oh, that's a funky bass line or whatever. They're just kind of, oh, that's where it needs to be. The song feels fuller.
Yeah.
And if I were to take it out, it would feel, you know, not as full, you know,
Yeah.
and just kind of thinking on, that's obviously a taste move and a production move.
For sure.
So with synth bass, are you using like analog stuff? Or is there like a certain synth you go to? Are you using VSTs? Like how do you get like some of those some of those different sounds? A lot of experimentation, or you're like, oh, I got this preset, let's do it.
It's a combination of all of those things.
All of them.
I have two Moogs here. Up right now is
Sick.
the Sub Fatty. Let's see if I can
Great.
maybe turn my camera a little bit. I don't know if you can see that because of the blinds,
Nice.
but yeah,
Cool.
man. I got the Sub Fatty up right now, and I also have the Little Fatty Stage 2. Um,
Great.
and those are really cool, man. I'm like really trying to dive into like sound creation, like, you know, and literal kind of like synthesis, like just
Yeah,
how,
man.
you know, how are these knobs like really working. And so sometimes um I don't think I used either of those on Time Alone, but let's see, have I used, yeah, I don't think I used any of those on Time Alone, but I think all
Yeah.
the ones on Time Alone were um through Trillion, which is made by Spectrasonics, or
Cool.
Omnisphere, which is also made by Spectrasonics as well.
I've
And
heard a lot of great things. Yeah.
man, it's incredible because the cool part about it is they also have like hardware integration. So like I could plug up the Sub Fatty or the Little Fatty Stage 2 via USB and then just kind of select it in this little menu, and then I can literally control the patches on the panel on the, you know, and it's wild. It's wild.
How do they do it? It's incredible.
Yeah, man. But normally I'm just kind of like searching for presets because I'm still
Mm-hmm.
kind of like learning and diving into the synthesis thing, and I really want to be able to like kind of create sounds and be able to kind of like figure out like how to get the signal to do certain things, and you know, all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
for the most part, I'll just kind of take presets and tweak them to how I kind of, you
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Where you want them.
yeah.
I need to do that more. Because I will set up a patch and then I'll just completely delete. I have one analog synth called Electron Analog Keys.
Okay.
It's 4 voices, but then I end up using it for bass stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't gone down the rabbit trail of getting a bunch of analog like synth stuff
Mm-hmm.
because I got a ton of them. I know we talked about this a little bit,
Yeah,
but
for
there's
sure.
like on the phone, but you have in on your laptop so many kind of like access to these synths, you know,
Yeah.
these sounds that you can. It's kind of hard to when you're at my stage, justify spending like $1,500 on an analog synth that only is like one voice. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I'll make a patch and I'll be like, yeah, I'm gonna start from the beginning, man. I'm just gonna go right from the beginning and figure out something else, and won't even save it or like I'll just do a bunch of stuff like that. Make a
Yeah.
beat, make sure it's recorded, and then I'll just like delete the file, and I won't even like know how I did it.
Right.
I don't know why that is. Just like kind of like this experiment of getting it out.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I've been doing is taking, two different oscillators
Mm-hmm.
and then tuning one to like a fifth apart from the other one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then kind of just rolling off like the filter. So it's like super low, but there's two different like tones happening at the same time, and they're fifths apart. So they're not really ever going to clash.
Right.
And then I'm kind of just like, oh, I've heard that bass before. Like, how did Brandon get that? I wonder if that, or like, how did DJ Harrison get that, or Kiefer get that? Like, oh,
Yeah.
this sounds like something that they would do, or and just kind of like using your ear to be as your teacher of like what it is that you want it to sound like. And I think using references is like so important to that aspect of learning how these guys, these ladies, like whoever it was that made it,
Mm-hmm.
they were probably a lot better than me. So like, let's listen to how they did it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And just like using your ears as your teacher there.
Yeah. Like I've spent time like trying to like reverse engineer like the patches like on a little fatty, or because I think that one has like
That's
99.
huge, man.
Yeah, man. Because like I've just been trying to like go backwards. Like how did they get to this point? Like just from a pure, square tone, or just whatever.
Right.
And it's like, man, like how so I've been trying to do that as well too. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great, man.
Yeah.